the weeping lasted all night. I know that joy comes in the morning light. So I march on to a new song, 'cause I've been marching to that old one way too long. And I gotta move on and take new steps every day, 'cause I know there has got to be another way. And I'm brighter day, so I march on. We are going to get into the show. Before we get into the conversation, we have a video to play for you so you can get an idea of what it is that we're dealing with.
Oh yeah. Today I'm not okay. Another mother's child is gone. Now she'll never see them graduate. Oh, I'm worn down from this hate. God, if you're listening, I could really use your help today. Now normally I'd say I'm fine and just put on a smile, but I'm in so much pain. I'm looking for the sun to shine, but in these cloudy skies, all I see is rain. I'm not okay, I'm not alright. If I had a tear for every sister's loss, I wouldn't stop crying. No, today I'm not okay. I'm not okay, I'm not alright. When is enough enough for them to care about our lives? No, today I'm not okay. Today I'm not alright. I wonder would he still have the dream if Martin Luther King was alive? Oh, they shut down another light. Another family is fatherless just because of what he looked like. Now normally I'd say I'm fine and just put on a smile, but I'm in so much pain. I'm looking for the sun to shine, but in these cloudy skies, all I see is rain. I'm not okay, I'm not alright. If I had a tear for every sister's loss, I wouldn't stop crying. No, today I'm not okay. I'm not okay, I'm not alright. When is enough enough for them to care about our lives? No, today I'm not okay. Oh no. Today I'm not okay. I woke up this morning with the same problems from yesterday.
My goodness. All right. So I'm going to bring in my guests. Today with me, I have Pastor Edwin Perry. I have CIO, CHRO, Adrian Mitchell. And I also have with me Elijah Jamal, recording artist. Thank you guys for joining me. I truly appreciate you. Thanks, Elijah, for coming back.
Oh, there you go. I can hear you now.
Yep. There we go. Hey, everybody. So today, what we're... I'm sorry?
Oh, he said he can't hear you.
You said you can't hear me?
I can hear Elijah, but...
Oh, just me.
Yeah.
I'm the only one because I got the mic.
Oh,
Oh,
no.
that's probably
Can
what
the
it
rest
is.
of them hear you?
I can
Yes,
hear
I
you.
hear you fine.
Can you hear Asia?
Okay.
Okay. Well,
I hear
should we
you.
tap on it too?
I hear you. All right. Check 1, check 2. Hey,
Now I-
Chi-Town. Said, hey, family. Oh, great. Let's get going. So, what we are going to talk about today, the topic is Black Lives Matter, the battle for equality. You are not forgotten. This is part 2. And it's like, what are we going to do about one of the most tragic issues, not just in America, but across the globe? But the ones that we mentioned in the video are right here in the US of A. First, we need to clear up the misconceptions and expose the truth about Black Lives Matter. And then we need to talk about some real solutions. And as I said, today's show is a follow-up to the previous episode dealing with the importance of acknowledging and remembering the tragic killings that have resulted from racial violence. So the people that I chose to be on the show today all have their own unique background to contribute to this particular. I know for sure that Reverend P.U.R.E has a background in dealing with some activism and helping to clean up the communities around the church and further than that, abroad, and worked with Reverend Hazel Fort in getting some things changed, some significant things changed in the community around the Fillmore Christian House of Prayer Community Church on the west side of Chicago. And Ms. Adrienne Mitchell has an incredible background, somebody that I admire quite a bit, because I feel like she defeated the odds of everything. You know, she has her master's degree. She has continued to climb the ladder. She has a child with disabilities, and she's able to do all of these things and prosper through all of the things that she deals with, and being African-American woman at that, double minority. So I appreciate you joining us and admire you. Thank you for joining us. And Elijah, as I mentioned before, he is a recording artist, internationally known. And he dedicated a couple of songs of his to what's going on today. So he lent his music to us for this particular program. So before we get into talking about your individual perspectives, I wanted to play one more video. This video was also done in a previous video was done in another country. This particular video, I believe, was in New York that we're going to see part of, Elijah? Or was that in LA?
What video?
Your stand-up video, sorry.
Oh, I was just like, this video. No idea what you're talking about. Yes, stand up. It was actually, there's clips from both New York and LA, but the main clips is done in LA.
Okay. All right. So we're going to talk about the things that we've seen in these clips, and then we're going to talk about some of the issues, and then we're going to talk about some solutions.
All right.
All right.
Stand up for tomorrow. Stand up for tomorrow.
Be forgotten. Today, we'll all come together to take a stand. We have to stand up for our community.
Stand up.
We have to stand up for our community.
We've been torn down way too long. We can't take this anymore. Fight back, we must as one. Rise up, we must stand up. We gotta stand up. Stand up for something. 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 Or we'll fall for anything. Too many lives we have lost. All lives should matter to everyone. Fight back, we must as one. Rise up, we must stand up. We gotta stand up. Stand up for something. 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 Or we'll fall for anything. Stand up today for tomorrow. Stand up for change to follow. Stand up today for tomorrow. Stand up for hope to follow. Gotta stand up. Stand up for something. We 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 gotta stand up. Stand up for something. Or fall for anything.
All right. I like at the end there you said register to vote. Vote, people, please. Please. We only have a few more days. Um, so first, Elijah, I would like you to explain what led up to you writing those two songs, It's Not Okay and Stand Up. What was going on there that led you to that?
Sure. Well, first with Stand Up, we wrote that song actually about 4 years ago. And it was for an episode that was on Switched at Birth. And it basically dealt with injustice on a college campus. And it dealt with a very specific incident that happened. And so we wanted to write a song that would speak to that. And that's where Stand Up came from. And then after writing it and actually airing the show, we realized that Stand Up actually meant so much more than just that particular situation, but that there was many things in the world on a global scale that we needed to stand up for and take a stand. So that was what you saw was basically different situations, visuals that we were able to capture that showed other people taking a stand for what it was that they believed in, both being in LA and as well in New York. Um, the New York one was definitely before COVID, and there being so many people there. But the LA one was actually during COVID in the summer, in this past summer. So that's why you see the mask. For the other song, I'm Not Okay, I was inspired to write that after seeing the George Floyd video and really not being able to shake what I was feeling after seeing it. So at that point, I knew that I needed to get it out. I needed to just write down what I was feeling, and that's what music allows me to do more than not. So I was able to apply it and actually just have a raw emotion and expressing how I felt in that moment.
Okay. So Reverend Perry, and when you were watching those videos, what was your initial thoughts or feeling in seeing what you saw there?
Well, actually, in both of them, I saw the need for people to be aware that, what's been taking place. And the thing is, it didn't just occur, just like Elijah said, some things are inspired early on, maybe 4 or 5 years ago. But for me, it kind of takes me back through the historical effect of what racism has done and how we become somewhat anesthetized to murder, to pain, to just, everyday occurrences. And so, we see so many murders taking place in the city of Chicago. We see murders taking place all over the world. But, every time that we see one, if you don't get a brand new shock, and if you don't do something about it, then it really doesn't mean anything. We've had civil rights leaders that get murdered. We had everyday citizens to be murdered. And it seems as though we just kind of look at it and just say, oh, well, there's another one. But I think it's at a point now where we take it personally and we begin to empathize. We begin to have compassion, and we begin to look at it as that could have been me. It could have been my son, my nephew, a relative. And we begin to take it more seriously with a lot more in-depth compassion. And so the song really brings it out. I want to applaud Elijah on the wonderful job that he did. I really enjoyed not just the music itself, but the message in the music. And so I think that was really great.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You did a great job. Adrian, what made you, or how did you feel in watching those videos? What did you think?
Yeah, so I too love both of those songs. I had to mute my microphone so I could sing along, easy. I love that you played I'm Not Okay first, because I think, that's a very real feeling that, when we, continue to see young Black people die on a regular basis, it hurts us to our core. Um, and there's an immense sadness that you feel, right? And almost a despair. And I love though that is followed by stand up, right? You can't stand that despair. You have to do something, and we all have a role that we could do. And to Reverend Ed's point, even if it's just making people aware, even if we can help people relate to our lives, our experiences, like I tell people, every young Black brother I know has a story. Everyone, right? So I think both songs touch me, they speak to me, and they tell our story. So
Absolutely.
And can I say something, if I might?
Sure.
Sure,
go right ahead.
That I was thinking about when the title "It's Not Okay," even as I was talking about the fact that we become anesthetized to so much pain and violence, But the one thing, and I think that Ms. Mitchell can also attest to this, is that we deal a lot of times with the physical things in the hospital, but there are a lot of mental issues that are also as a result of what we've been seeing. And so, you know, you look at a person, you say, oh, you go to work every day, you know, you're doing your music, you're singing songs, you know, you have your program, you got your work, you're doing this. But
Right.
deep down inside, there's something triggered mentally that we never really try to deal with. And I know it's because I'm working with some people from Rush Hospital here in Chicago. And one of the things we're dealing with the COVID and also the trauma that takes place with COVID. But we're also dealing with the mental aspect of it, that there is a need to deal with the mental aspect of what people are going through as a result of the murder, the COVID, and all the other things. And what I'm saying is that we have been taught, you know, or at least I have, be tough, be strong, you know, men don't cry, you know, don't get upset. But I've
Right.
seen strong people as a result of what has happened with these recent murders, where I see basketball coaches crying. I see basketball players crying. I see football players crying because this has touched, like Adrian said, down into the core of what we've been feeling, but we're always suppressing it and not letting it come up. But it's not okay. It's not okay. We have to, you know, talk to someone. We have to share with one another. We have to let our feelings be heard, let our thoughts be heard. And so this is a time where really people have really said it's not okay. Enough is enough, and we've got to do something about it. So I just want to add that in as well.
Absolutely right. Absolutely right. And you know, so people understand why in the presentation that had I'm Not Okay in the background, why we were showing more present day situations and then situations that happened in the 1950s, is to show the areas that haven't really changed. We are still fighting the good fight in regards to racial inequality and the violence going on against the African American community. It it was happening then and it's happening now. And I want people to understand, yes, this is the same thing. That horrific situation that we saw, that we get taught about through, you know, Black History Month and certain programs, we get told about Emmett Till, a very well-known situation. Guess what? We've actually had some horrific situations like that happen present day. And people need to recognize that that's still something that we're dealing with. So now we're at the point where we have Black Lives Matter movement. So we're not even talking about the organization. We're talking about the movement itself. And I know for sure, at least you, Reverend Perry, you've been a part of movements, you know, throughout your life. And what I want to know is, watching all of the things that you've grown up with and things that you've seen, have you ever felt discouraged in trying to help make change? Were you discouraged that there would be change?
Well, you know, let me just say this. First of all, I guess I'm a very tenacious but a patient person. So I have a patient tenacity. In other words, I don't give up until I feel like it's over. And I've never really felt like it's over. I always feel like there's work to be done. As you had said, you know, I've seen a lot in my lifetime. You know, I've seen actually my one of my best friends, his cousin was Emmett Till. So that kind of struck home with him with me when he told me that his cousin was murdered. You know, that kind of struck home with me. But then I've seen, even like you said, I was on the West Side when Fred Hampton, Mark Clark, when they burst into their apartment and just shot up the apartment like it was nothing. You know, so I've seen this. I've been a part of marches, you know, with mayors, police officers, clergy, you know, you name it. I've been out there doing it. And so I'm still not tired because the battle is not over. You know, the war hasn't been won. We have to continue to stay on the battlefield. And so even when Dr. King came to Chicago, he stayed right there on the West Side. We got a chance to actually, it's interesting how you meet these celebrities, but at the time you don't really know the magnitude of what's going on. But because they didn't have his place ready, he was staying right down the street from us. Reverend Green actually took him into his house and kept him there. So, we've seen all these things happen, and to see really the growth of how far we've come, but it's still not far enough. I can remember like when Dr. King came, and we went like into places like Marquette Park. We went into places like Evergreen Park. We went into places like Bridgeport. These are places like right either in Chicago or on the outskirts of Chicago, and these people were the ones who had dogs, who had fire hoses, who even the police were not on our side. And so I've seen that discrimination up close and personal, and just living it, you would think, oh, okay, well, you've come a long way. But no, we haven't. Actually, it seemed like we took a couple of giant steps forward, and then all of a sudden we started running backwards. And so there's a lot of work to do. There's a lot of work to do. And I'm not tired yet.
Well, I thank God that you're not tired yet. We still got some warriors on the battlefield. Adrian, I wanted to know, how does it make you feel, as a mother? And we didn't grow up together, so I don't know about all of the things that you dealt with. But in watching all of these young men being taken down over the years, how does that made you feel?
Boy, so if I can, I'll just give a little bit about my background, right? So I grew up in rural Michigan, and graduated with a class where I was one of 3 Black people in the class, and so I have a very diverse set of friends. I have a diverse set of experiences. Always had family and cousins who lived, in Chicago, and so came here a lot. But very diverse background. I mean, different background. And so growing up, I can honestly say, I wasn't exposed to a lot of the tragedies that would occur with my people and in my neighborhoods and in my communities. And so I think when I came of age and went to college and started becoming more aware, it hit me like a ton of bricks. The history that I was never taught, right? I don't ever remember Emmett Till being mentioned in my high school at all. And so I think there was definitely an awareness. And then, as you start having conversations with, family members and relatives, and, because you see it on TV, it's one thing. But then, you talk to your brothers and you talk to your cousins and you talk to your uncles and you talk to your dad. My dad was born in 1928 and had the same stories that my brothers had, and now my, nieces and nephews are having. And so the problem seems vast, it seems difficult, and there is a lot of work to do. It is tackling structural racism in every structure in our society, right? From education to prisons to housing to healthcare, you name it, we got work to do. And so it can feel overwhelming, but I think there's a lot of us and a lot of warriors, to use your word, and we have to get in where we fit in and keep fighting every day. So
Absolutely. Absolutely. Elijah, as a millennial, have the more recent situations, have they bothered you, or caused even an element of fear, being a young Black man yourself? How has it affected you?
I would say as a young I'm calling myself young. It's funny. As a young black man,
You're young in this group.
yeah, I get it. I realized that there's two fears that come up when it when you see those sirens go off and you get pulled over. One is, what did I do? And then the other one is, could this be one of those moments? And that's not a comfortable feeling for anybody,
Can you
because
expound on what you mean when you say one of those moments?
basically a moment where someone of authority, a police officer, um, basically has a power trip and decides to abuse that power because of my skin color. You know, um, fortunately, I haven't had to deal with it so much, but the first time I got pulled over, that's exactly what it was. A young officer just looking for something, and wasn't able to find anything because there was nothing, no record, nothing like that. But nevertheless, you could tell he was trying to aggravate something, instead of just serving and protecting, which is what we believe and what we count on them to do. So just from that aspect of knowing, hey, the people that I'm supposed to call if I'm in danger, I can't call. And then knowing that you're in danger around your own people because some people just don't know how to act. It's really a very challenging situation to be in, because it's like, who are you going to call? Who can you count on? And then you have to think about it. Now it's like, do you even take this chance? Are you comfortable? Now, me being a musician, I find myself working very late, and so it's very common for me to not get home until 2 in the morning or something like that. So it's not a lot of cars, not a lot of people, it's not, there's not a lot of traffic going on in those situations. So it's like I'm extra cautious now, because chances are they pulled me over, and I got an hour and a half drive home. People may not see me, you know and those are things that I have to really think about,
Yeah.
like making sure that I do everything that I can just so I can make it home to my family.
Yeah. Yeah, it can be a very scary situation. So, we've discussed some
Excuse me.
disturbing.
Can I say something about what Elijah
yeah.
just said? The reason I want to bring this up
Sure.
is because one of the things that I found is that, like with me, growing up, there was a certain amount of naivete as far as how I saw things. Like you said, I used to see the police as being, hey, that's our friend. He's a good guy. But we
Right.
lived next door to a lady by the name of Miss Porter, and Miss Porter raised a bunch of sons, and her kids, her sons were big, much bigger than her, and sometimes they would get out of line and they would challenge her. They would, uh, put their chests out and, Mama, you ain't telling me what to do. And she would say, hey, boy, I'll put you in jail. You're not going to, threaten me. And so she would call the police. And I know even recently we've seen where people have called the police, and sometimes the people would have a mental issue or whatever the case. They tell the police, hey, my son has a problem. He's like this. He's threatening. And the police would come in and shoot the child. So what Miss Porter would do is she would tell them when they would come out, first of all, most of the police officers were Caucasian. They were white. And she'd say, I need a black police officer. And I'm thinking to myself, if you need the police, why not just say I need the police? But she would specify, I need a black police officer. And they say, well, why can't you let us deal with your problem? She said, because I need someone who can relate to my sons, someone who is sensitive, someone who I can communicate with, and that I know that when you leave here, my son's going to be okay. And I never really thought about it. I mean, I was a child, and I'm just thinking, this lady is kind of, she's crazy. Why would she say, I need a black police officer? But it was a couple of things that she was doing. She was letting them know that they were not sensitive enough to deal with a problem. She also was letting them know that we have a lack of minority police officers and we need more. And she was also letting them know that she was no dummy, that she was aware of the problem. You know, she had a problem, but she didn't want the problem to be escalated by bringing in someone who was going to escalate the problem. And so I just want to add that in because this is what we look at. This is what we deal with. I know one time coming from high school, and I had, you know, how you carry your football equipment, you got a big duffel bag, and I'm carrying it. And of course, I'm in an all white neighborhood, and they pulled me up, put my hands up against the wall, and told me they just got a report that someone had burglarized the house. And so I had nothing that I could, you know, use in my defense. Only thing I could say, I just came from football practice. But it took the other white players coming and validating me for the police to say, okay, go ahead. But other than that,
Wow.
it could have been any kind of situation. I could have said, well, man, what'd you stop me for? And the next thing I know, we'd be fighting, and, you know, it would have been one of those situations. But I'm just saying, they were, the guys, they were surprised. Like, Ed, what are you doing? What they stop you for? And I'm like, hey, man, walking while black. You know, we're used to it. Y'all just have never seen this before, but we do this on a regular, you know? And so I'm just saying, you know, people just don't realize what we go through and the fact that we have to tell our kids or our sons or even our daughters, if you get stopped, this is how you should act. Fortunately, in our family, because of the fact of how we were raised, we didn't have much issue with that because we were taught to say, yes, sir, no, sir, yes, ma'am, no, ma'am. And so generally, if you treat a person with that type of respect, they say, oh, he's okay, go ahead. You know, but that's just how we were raised.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, absolutely right. Unfortunately, we have found in recent situations that even when you are respectful and polite, your life can still be ended.
Oh, yeah.
Like what happened to the young man that happened to have a firearm in his vehicle. He let the police officer know that he had a firearm in his vehicle. He had his child in the back, his wife next to him, and was very polite. He did everything that he was asked to do, and he was shot dead in front of his family in the vehicle. So for those of you that wonder why we fear being pulled over or why we have issues with law enforcement, that's why. Because it seems like regardless of what we do or what we say, it can go either way.
Yeah.
Hey, cousin. I see somebody in there that I haven't seen commenting on the show before.
Oh, look at the little baby.
So, hello. Thank you. All right. So in everything that we're talking about and dealing with, the whole point in gathering this particular group is because what I want to look at is what we've done so far in trying to get things changed, and maybe, you know, some ideas on how we can do better, or maybe emphasize things that we've tried to do and didn't do well enough. You know, let's get some opinions on the things that have been going on. Last time that we spoke, there was a lot of back and forth talk in regards to the rioting that's been happening. And there's reasons for it that it's happened. You know, like we said, you know, people have been angry, they've been fed up. The question is that the right way to get anything changed? Is that the right way to get things done or get the message out? What message is it really sending? What message do you think it's sending, Adrian?
Well, you know, I certainly understand the anger. I think we're all angry. And I understand the frustration in that, you know, how long are we gonna, you know, march and protest and you know, try to tell our stories. I'm of the opinion that, change happens when, it's not only the oppressed who are aware and feel the pain, but the majority also begin to feel that pain. And I think that we're at a point where they are, becoming aware and recognizing there's unjust treatment. But my personal opinion is that they don't understand the riotings and the destroying our neighborhoods. And so, I like I said, I understand it. I don't personally condone it, and I actually doesn't think it helps our cause.
What do you say behind that, Elijah?
Well, I think it's interesting because in thinking about the rioting, living in LA, knowing that we've just had two huge championships, one from the Dodgers and then from the LA Lakers, rioting follows that. That's what people do. If you win a championship, something like that in your city, when the Cubs won finally, or the White Sox won finally in Chicago, there was rioting that took place. No one at that point was saying, I don't understand the rioting. No one was well, at least I didn't hear them. I won't say that no one was saying it, but they weren't making a big deal of it because it was just like, this is what we do. This is how we show our affection. I don't know. I don't understand it either. But the point is, it happened, and it was because of something that they were proud of happening. It wasn't because they were angry that we won. It was because they were happy. They were excited. Now you have on the flip side some people that are rioting, which, to be honest, even with the rioting, a lot of that is not even the protesters really rioting, but people trying to infiltrate the protesting and trying to change the narrative of the protesting. If we can be honest, it's not even really those that are really seeking real change, but just trying to sabotage it. But if we're dealing with those that are a part of it, that are also rioting as well, they're speaking towards something that says, I'm not okay. There's a message in it that has so much more volume, but it's not accepted. But you can accept someone doing it if your city won because of their favorite team.
Well, if I'll just add, I'm sorry. I don't condone that either, right? But in these particular protests, I live in Brownsville in Chicago. We still have Walgreens in our neighborhood that are closed, and people don't have close places to go get prescriptions. We have, grocery stores that have, shortened hours. And in the age of COVID, it just means more people in the store. I mean, I don't think we're helping not only our cause, but our communities and our neighborhoods. And so, I don't, and that's what I keep saying. I do understand the anger, but I think the aftermath, it has hurt. I think it set our communities and our neighborhoods back, years. I don't know if some of these stores are ever going to open again. So.
Right. I want to hear what you
agree
feel.
with that. I just, if I can just say, I'm not saying that I condone it at all. I just find that it's an interesting perspective when you look at those two different instances.
And I want your perspective to Reverend Perry in regards to the rioting and the response to the violence that's happened.
Yeah, I think that all of us agree that we don't condone the rioting, but I know that William Greer wrote a book years ago called Black Rage. And what happens is, as I was talking about the mental thing that takes place within the Black community, with Black people seeing so much and so many things being suppressed, is that even when there's a celebration, like you said, whether the Bulls win or the Cubs or the Dodgers or whoever, when there's something to celebrate, they don't know how to celebrate, and so they've got all this, especially if they're celebrating the Cubs because they hadn't won anything in so long. They just people just don't know how to act.
They lose their mind.
But what they want to do, what they want to do is allow that that pent up frustration to come out. So just like Elijah said, if it's a celebration, they turn over cars, they set fires, they do all sorts of things. Not only here, they do it all over in Europe and other places. They tear up the place. That's just how they celebrate. But what happens is, and I think to Adrian's point, is back in 1968, when they rioted in Chicago, they tore up the stores, they burned down everything. And those stores have not come back. It has not been built up since. And even the few stores that we did have, they tore those up. And what happens is we don't really own too much of anything. Mm-hmm. So in 1968, I was living at 1314 South Holman. My Aunt Ruth owned the building. My mother had a cleaners. Aunt Ruth had a variety store. And here, all these black brothers and sisters, mainly brothers, coming down the street. They're making what we call Molotov cocktails. We can see the flame because they got a bottle with a wick out of it, ready to throw it into the building because they want to get into the store to get a few items, a few goods. But they don't care that there are people living up above those stores. Mm. So quite naturally, what do you think we did? We defended our property. Shotguns coming out the window, pistols out the windows, telling them black people live here. And if you throw a Molotov cocktail, it will be your last throw.
Really?
Wow, wow,
when family come together, there's nothing greater than a group of people who love one another and want to protect one another. And so what I'm just saying is this: you can celebrate, but even a fool knows when to quit. When they saw those guns and we said, hey, you can go ahead and throw it, but it will be your last throw. Oh no, that's a black family up there. No, we're going down the street. And that's what happened. And unfortunately, people who own stores in this modern time didn't live in the community. They weren't able to protect their property, and it just got totally destroyed. It's unfortunate, but I never condone demolition or tearing up of property, especially tearing up where you live. Even a dog knows better than that. Right. You don't poop in the dish that you eat out of. You take care of your surroundings. Mm-hmm. And that's what happened. Even if you think about it, in Cicero, right now there are a lot of Hispanics that live in Cicero, Illinois. When Black Lives Matter or people came out there to riot, what do you think those people did? They said, you ain't marching here. You ain't tearing up our stores.
Yeah.
We will fight you and make sure you don't tear up our neighborhood. Go back where you live. That's what they did.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely right. Absolutely right. That's a good point. One of the things that I've heard a lot is people saying, okay, you guys are out there talking about Black Lives Matter, but look at what you do to each other. You're killing each other. You're destroying your own neighborhoods. Obviously, you don't think your life matters as much as you say it does. So it's a good point. So I guess the question then is, some people are just very frustrated and they're like, well, if I'm not blowing stuff up, people aren't listening. So what's the alternative? What's a better way to get the message out? What do you think, Adrian, would be a better approach in regards to making people listen?
So, before I answer that question, something you said triggered something else where you said, people are like, y'all killing each other and y'all need to work on killing each other. And could I speak to that for just a moment?
Yes, ma'am.
I told one of my coworkers, I said, this analogy, I think makes more sense. Like if I have $10 and I have it in my back pocket and I'm walking down the street and a pickpocket takes my $10, I'm mad that pickpocket took my $10. I'm like, who did it? I'm looking for them. I'm trying to find them. But if I take that same $10 and put it in a bank where they're supposed to protect my money and help me grow my money, and they take my $10, it's a different kind of anger because the system that's set up to supposed to help you is actually hurting you, right? So I think it's a very, both are problems, both are wrong, but it's a whole different context. And so I just wanted to share that. But to answer your question, what do I think is more constructive ways? I mean, it's challenging because change doesn't happen quick, right? I think we as a people um, have to decide what we want, decide how we're going to know we get there. We're going to have to come up with our platform. Like, we're all into Black Lives Matter, but what are we trying to achieve? And we're going to have to hold people accountable. And that's going to take perseverance. It's going to take time. It's going to take each of us doing our part. I happen to work in healthcare. So one of the things I can influence in my world is like healthcare disparities. I'm in HR. I can look at employment practices. And in my world, I can try to make those improvements. I think each of us have to do that. But we've been trying to do this a long time, and even though I feel like we've made some progress and awareness, I think we got a long way to go. So I understand it's frustrating. I don't have a good answer. But
Yeah, absolutely. Let's speak on that tenacity Reverend Perry said he has.
Okay.
And doing all of this fighting that's been going on and trying to fight for equality, as we all seem to understand the frustration that's been going forth. So how do we make our
I didn't
voices
get the
heard?
last
How do
part.
we actually bring about positive?
Okay. What's the matter? Oh, but anyway, what I was going to say is this. Somebody's laughing. Okay. Yeah, you kind of froze there for a second, but that's cool. What I was going to say is
okay.
is that, as you said, it has been going on for a long time, and there is frustration on the part of many people. What I've tried to do is attack this thing from a lot of different angles. One of the things that I do is that I work with ex-offenders because I believe that if you change a person's heart and mind, you can change their direction. And so I do some mentoring of guys. I have like about 200 guys that I mentor. And what I try to do is to let them see, like, from a biblical standpoint about, why did God give the 10 Commandments? What was expected of them? Why is law and order so important? Those kind of things. Because here's what happens is that if you don't have people who believe in something, then the law doesn't mean anything to them. So if the Bible says thou shalt not kill or thou shalt not murder, sometimes people can justify the things they do because of what they want, the end result. Let me just give an example. A friend of mine, he's deceased now, but his name was P.U.R.E Ali. And P.U.R.E was a history teacher at Hyde Park High School. And a lot of his students were Blackstone Rangers. And so he taught history, but he went all the way back to the idea that if I teach the students where they came from, that they would see that we're not just slaves. Our history didn't just start with slavery, that we had history way before the Mayflower. And so if they can see that we were in fact kings and queens and that we had wealth and all these sort of things, that it might make a difference. So they went back and talked to their leader, who was Jeff Ford, and said, look, you need to hear what this man got to say. He's saying some really good things. P.U.R.E began to talk to Jeff Ford. Jeff Ford said, man, this guy is telling us some good stuff. So as a result of it, P.U.R.E was able to get the leaders of the disciples and the Blackstone Rangers to have a truce, because he was telling them, look, why are you guys killing each other over what? What are you killing each other over? There's plenty of wealth out here for everybody. So in fact, you guys are brothers and you're killing your own relatives. That's really what you're doing. So he's able to get a truce. But here's what I'm going to say is that when you're able to do something positive like that, then people want to run you out of town. So what they did is the police and the powers that be said, we got to get rid of this guy. So he had to leave Chicago and went to Washington, D.C. and pretty much, separated himself from the group and from everything else. And then as soon as he left, everything went back to normal again and people started killing each other.
Yeah.
The same thing, if you think about it, when you start having blacks that are prospering, whites can't stand it. You look at Oklahoma, you look at Black Wall Street. Here was, people used to talk about, we need to have our own, we need to be separate. So these people all came together. They were upward mobile people like ourselves, like Miss Mitchell, where they had master's degrees, they had their own businesses. The city was like a mecca of who knows who black people that were making money. The people in the surrounding area said, we can't have this. They burned the town down, burned it down completely. Because one thing you have to realize, they don't want to share power. If you have an economic base, if you have an education, if you have things that are thriving, they don't want you to succeed. They want to keep a class system where one is here and the other one is there. And so what I'm saying is this, and I think that, I don't know if it's a solution to it, but I think the first thing is education. Even as Ms. Mitchell said, she was raised in Michigan, probably 99.9% white and 3 little black people. But she did not tell you that she was the top of her class, that she was the valedictorian, right?
Salutatorian.
And her sister also, one of the other blacks that was at that school, graduated at the top of the class.
Yeah.
So what I'm saying is, in the household, someone had to sit them down at the table and say, here's what we need to do. You need to study. You need to, be the best and show yourself that they're no better than you are. And that's the way we were always taught. For some reason, black people don't see themselves as being either as good as or better. We used to think we were better. I'm just going to be honest with you.
You're right.
It used to be an embarrassment if we competed with someone white and we didn't win. I mean, we had to live that down. We had to be harassed and ridiculed until the next meet. And then we had to beat them real bad the next time. That's just the way we were brought up. And so I'm just saying is that it all begins in the home. Adrian didn't get to be so smart because she didn't have a good home or upbringing. It was because someone, I believe her dad, would sit down with her, teach her math, teach her other things, even though she was smart, but he made her wise. And that's a big difference. You can have some street smarts, you can have some intelligence, but wisdom comes from knowing something higher than yourself. And so, learning poems, all the old people, not all of them, but most of the old people that I know all knew poems. They could recite poems and you'd be like, why you keep repeating that silly stuff? But you know what they were doing? That's how we learn. We learn through poems and poetry and so forth. And that was the key to it. And so education at home first. I think that faith is very important. I think that family is the pillar of what we all need. I think that you need to be civically minded, politically aware, and community oriented. Meaning that if you've got people in your community, you need to know who they are. Here's the funny thing. My grandson is out here because I'm, keeping him while he's doing his classes and so forth. But we do a walk and he says, Grandpa, who is that? I say, oh, that's Bob over there. Grandpa, who is that? He wants to make sure that he knows everybody in the community. But do we know everybody where we live now? No. And I can tell you, my neighbor don't look like me. But my grandson Samuel will say, hey, Grandpa, there's your friend Bob over there. I say, he's not my friend. He said, but you talk to him. I said, yeah, okay, hey, Bob. He was, but here's the good thing about it, is that if my grandson should be out there and get lost, do you know that Bob and everybody else will say, oh yeah, we saw your grandson, he was over there.
Mm-hmm.
And they are aware of where he's going and what he's doing.
Mm-hmm.
We are not aware, because how was he allowed to abduct so many black people and, get away with it? Because we don't know our neighbors. We don't care.
Right.
But my neighbor, Roma, has got 3 little blonde girls. A car pulled up and sat there. She went and knocked on his window. What are you doing standing here? I got 3 girls. I want to know, what are you doing sitting here in your car? She says, if you don't leave, I'm going to call the police. That's the way they respond. That's the way they act. But I can guarantee you, right next to the church, a car could sit there, because I know it for a fact, can sit there for a month and nobody would say anything. We just have to be aware and care civically about our community. And if we don't, the community just goes to hell in a handbag.
That is a good point. I got to.
We could drop the mic on that.
I definitely don't know my community. That's a really good point. That's a really good, because if I saw somebody else with, one of the children from down the street, I wouldn't know, because I don't know. I don't. Elijah, being a millennial, you have a different perspective and different amount of experience. In regards to what you're hearing, what do you think that you can do to contribute to a positive change in regards to what we're talking about?
Well, that's my biggest motivation for doing music, is to impact positively. And I think by even giving those messages of I'm not okay and stand up, it allows us the opportunity to really not only feel what we're going through, but also to change the narrative of what we're listening to as well. Because you talk about the psyche and the things that we take in, it's not surprising that when you have so much violence in what you're reading, there's no way you could watch the news all day and then walk away with a positive attitude. There's no way, because it's just not enough positivity. Yeah. And in the same way, whatever you decide to intake into the mental space, into your heart, whatever you're consuming on a daily basis, that's what you become. And so by changing that narrative from a music aspect and shedding a little bit more light, and talking about things that are not so negative, then that gives the opportunity to really change the mind a little bit for a positive outcome. And I think one of the interesting things about change, a lot of times with people that don't have God or don't have a real faith, change only happens when they're uncomfortable, when they're forced to change. And they have to be put in a position where it's like, if you don't change, like, you're just going to be cornered in this situation. And unfortunately, that may be what it takes for certain people to reach that point where they feel like change is necessary, by being in that place of discomfort. Whereas overall, I do believe the notion of creating change should revolve around love and respect for one another. And being able to respect someone doesn't mean you have to like them, but you can still respect them. And by having that love for just human beings, I think it's a lot easier than to understand the importance and the weight of someone's life. It shouldn't be so simple for someone to be okay with taking someone's life and thinking that that's okay, And so I think those two components would probably be one of the greatest necessities to actually creating real change.
Yeah. I can agree with some of that. It looks like Reverend Perry wants to say something. You had a thought?
I do, because Elijah brought up something that I think is very important. I think we might have missed that, but I think you have to think about the human element. In other words, sometimes people don't realize that Black people are human beings. In other words, you're not a full human being, you're Black. And let me just give an example of that. If you think about it, there are more things that you see about people trying to save animals, cats and dogs. When you see like in Louisiana, and they'll say, "Oh, we've got to get in there and rescue those dogs, those poor dogs," and they'll have fundraisers and everything else going for it. But you can also see there are people who are standing on top of their roofs. There are people who are holding onto a piece of board, and they just act like, "Oh, okay, well, wait for FEMA. FEMA will get you," But that's kind of what happens. But then you also have to think about his name eludes me right now. I'm thinking about the football player the quarterback. What's it?
Reggie.
Not
No.
Red.
No, I can't think of it. But I know what you're
Are you
talking about.
talking
The pit bull.
No.
No.
This was a quarterback that he actually owned a nice house. Wasn't even at home, and his friends were having dog fights.
Oh, Vic.
What happened?
Michael Vick.
Yeah, Michael Vick.
Right.
Michael Vick. They wanted to put that man in jail, strip all of his accolades of what he had done as a football player, and put this man, in prison for dogs being dead. Now we kill animals to eat them. We kill animals. We kill raccoons and squirrels and rabbits.
You kill.
I'm just saying, people kill them. They kill birds.
Right.
But when an animal dies, they get up. They get angry. They get angry. They say, "Oh, that poor dog. Did you see him? Or the dog is out there freezing." But you have black people that are homeless, black people that are freezing, black people that are dying, and there is no outcry. I don't see it because they don't look at them as being human. What we have to do, especially the evangelical Christians who say they care so much and love God so much, they have to have the compassion to say, these are our brothers and sisters, and we are going to raise our voice about the inhumane treatment of blacks being treated by law enforcement, the Department of Justice, and everything else. Across the board, there is a plan in place to eliminate black people. I'm just going to tell you, it's the truth. And so I was talking with a couple of high-ranking police officers here in Chicago, meaning commanders and above, and they were saying, we can't control who becomes a police officer. Because I was asking them, I said, why in this district, why are black people being treated like this? And they say, well, we only command the district, but we have people come from Alabama, Arkansas, Mississippi, and we also have people come from Poland. We have people come from all over. We can't control. Anybody can apply to be a police officer. So if a person comes in already with a predisposition about how they feel about black people, this only gives them a license to kill. And that's what happens. I was talking with my sister. I said, do you realize that some of these officers come in and they're bold enough to put a banana on the seat or on the car of the commander? In other words, calling him a monkey is what they're really saying.
Wow.
If they're bold enough to do that to the commander, what would they do to the average person who's out there on the street, maybe selling drugs or in a gang or
doing nothing?
Or doing nothing, just walking down the street. If they're bold enough to do that to a high-ranking police official, then the life of the average person means absolutely nothing.
Yeah.
And so we have to just be aware of that.
Wow. Yeah. That's interesting. It's like, well, how can you fix something like that if they don't even see us as human?
That's it.
How do you, that's a bit discouraging. How do you make the change? Yeah, where do you go from there? Because I mean, obviously it's illegal to murder. Obviously it's illegal to, just take somebody's life without cause. But if they're not even seeing us as human beings, then in their minds, maybe it isn't murder. Maybe in their minds, it's not a killing without cause, without just cause.
But, the term that they use when a police officer killed someone, they say it was justifiable.
Right.
They say it was justifiable. When is it justifiable to take a person's life when all they were doing was either running or going to their car to get their credentials or whatever the case might? When is that justifiable? They say this is a justifiable shooting. It's never justifiable to me. You know, you have stun guns, you have all sorts of other, you have a nightstick, you have all sorts of things you can use rather than having your gun as the first choice of defense. You know, I've got friends who are police officers, never killed anybody, and live and work in some of the worst districts, the 11th district, the 15th district, the 12th district. They've worked in some of the worst districts in the city of Chicago, but never killed anybody. Why? Because they had the sensitivity to say, if I were on the other side of this, how would I want to be treated? That's the whole thing. So I think one of the keys is sensitivity training. You know, I know that in the early 1990s, there was a thing called CAPS. And that was brought out because there were so many murders taking place in the city of Chicago. And they said, we need to do something. So it was community alternative policing strategies, right? This is saying now the community is going to tell you how they feel, what their problems are, and you tell them how you're going to deal with it. And it worked real well because we developed a rapport with the police officers, with the business community, with all of the key players in the community, and then we held them accountable. That was so important. Let's see, I need to do what? Louder?
That's not to you. Oh.
Okay. And so, yeah, we had to speak up and let people know what was going on. So I moved from being just a person attending a meeting to a beat facilitator, then becoming the chairman of the district. And so I had, you know, audience with all of the superintendents that we've had, you know, for the last 30 years. But that's where the difference is. And here's what happens with that sensitivity. What we realized is that they also stopped the superintendent's wife, who was Black, and they treated her a little bit rough. She told her husband, and she didn't tell him at the time, but she told her husband. Her husband said, give me the name of the officer. We're going to have a talk. And he's like, oh, boss, I didn't know that was your wife. You know, he says, but no, you should treat everybody that you stop with respect. Not just because she's the superintendent's wife, but because she's a person. And you're stopping her, hopefully to help her, not to hinder where she's going and what she's doing. And so we just have to really educate. You know, I think what Adrian said is very true. Sometimes we have to realize people don't know what they don't know. And they don't realize that they have these biases. Sometimes they don't realize that, you know, they'll say, well, I've had people even in my school, they say, well, we don't look at you as if you're Black. Well, every time I look in the mirror, I see somebody look Black to me, you know? so I don't know what kind of glasses you got on, but the truth of the matter is you're white, I'm Black, but that's okay. We're not a melting pot. We are a salad. And you can be a tomato or a lettuce or whatever you want to be, but don't try to take away my heritage. Don't try to take away who I am. Don't try to make yourself feel good by trying to make me think or tell yourself that you're colorblind, because you're not.
Right.
Every time you see me, you see a Black person. You know, so let's just get over it and move forward.
Right. And we need you to see that, right?
Yeah, we need you to see that.
Yeah.
Don't, you know, it's almost like, what was it, the spook that sat by the door? You know, y'all not familiar with that?
I don't.
Here's I'm gonna tell you this. In I think it was 1966 or 67, it was required in the state of Illinois that they teach African American history. Of course, I went to a school, so there weren't that many Blacks in the class, and a white man was teaching the African American history class. But it was required reading that we had to read before the Mayflower, and then we had to choose several other books. It could have been something by Richard Wright. It could have been something by another book by Lerone Bennett Jr. but we had to read books. Some of the ones that I enjoyed was, after the fact, was Letter from the Birmingham Jail by Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. But then there was also, I told you, The Spook That Sat by the Door by Sam Greenlee. And then there was also Notes of a Native Son by James Baldwin. That was a powerful, powerful reading. So I'm just saying, if we don't learn of our history, if we don't know where we came from, then we will suffer the same consequences that have already occurred. And that's one of the reasons that we don't move forward. A lot of times people have a negative take on the Black Panther Party. But one thing I can tell you, they required you to go to school. They required you to get an education. They walked the kids to school to make sure they went to school. And then on top of that, they were the ones who started the Head Start program and also the feeding program. But if you let someone put a spin on it, they'll tell you they were nothing but a bunch of thugs, because that's what they want you to believe. Anyone who's doing good in the community, they're going to take a spin on it and tell you, oh, well, no, that was a hate group. That was a terrorist group. No, what they did is they stood up to the powers that be, whether it was Fred Hampton, Mark Clark, Huey P. Newton, you name it, they all stood up and they knew their rights. Here's the thing about it. You always hear this thing about the right to bear arms, right? Well, it's always been there, but it only becomes a problem when we start bearing arms. I'm being honest with you. When the Black Panther Party had their TAMs on and they were walking down and had their rifles, said, I have a right to bear arms, now it became an issue. But when whites had arms to keep us in check, oh, well, that's what it was all about. That's even why the police force was started, to put us in check, because before that, they didn't need a police force. But when they freed us and we started moving out on our own, how are we going to put these people back in check? A lot of people don't know that we had Black police officers in the city of Chicago back in 1871. I thought the first Black police officer was Renault Robinson, who started the African American Patrolmen's League back in the 60s. But we've had police officers. We had Black police officers. We've had Black political officials, So when we learn our history, we'll realize it didn't just start with Black Lives Matter. It simply illuminated and got the attention so that everybody can come together. And I am so glad that the pro ball players and the entertainers are getting on board, because their voices have been silent for way too long. But now it's just, it's like everything lined up and everything's perfect for us all coming together. And I hope that we see something good come from it. If we just do it and forget about it, it'll be right back where we started again. One step forward, two steps back. But anyway, I said my piece.
I just want to add, I want to say yes, and right. I agree with everything you said. But I also want to really point out that I think we as a people have to understand the power of our vote. And
Yes.
I am so discouraged by some of the young people who don't feel like their votes matter. And collectively, as a people, we have so much power.
Yes.
I was thinking about how senior citizens, no politician comes into office thinking that they're going to touch Medicare or Social Security.
That's
Because the
right.
seniors don't play that. They stick together as a voting bloc. And if you even mention it,
Don't
they
mess with
vote
my
for
Social
you.
Security.
That's right. And you will not win. And I think we as a people have to come together. We have, key issues. Police brutality is one of them.
Yes.
We have to use the power of our vote.
Yes.
And so that's something I didn't want to. You said so much, Reverend Ed, I agree with you, but I didn't want to
I'm
miss
glad
that.
you said that, because here's the thing about it. I had a young man, he's 27 now, but he said he had never voted before, 27 years old. And so I told him, I said, you know what? I blame you for Trump. Because there's people in your age bracket, people like you, because you did not vote, that man got into position. So we gotta dump T Rump. That's what we gotta do.
I'm what you do.
Elijah,
Mhm.
do you have associates or friends that also feel like their vote does not matter?
I mean, I'm sure I do. I don't think that's the majority. But I mean, I'm sure there are some, and I would say if we looked at the last 4 years, I might understand their perspective on that. Um, but you don't look at any one situation and say that, well, this is just how things are, because everything changes at some point in time.
Mhm.
And so, what's important is that you be a part of the change and not just a victim of it. So
Hmm.
that's the stance that I try to take, is being a part of the change and not a victim to it.
Right, right. And I've actually heard people say, because people voted and this is what happened. I said, yeah, but you didn't, and several
Mhm.
others didn't. It's like that's what happens if we don't collectively unite and get together and get out there and vote. No, you're not going to see the change you're looking for. I was, while doing my research in regards to this topic, first of all, there's so many stories. When you dig into the history of our people, there's so much there. And there was a government of people, and in this government of people, there were some African American officials that were in office. And with this particular situation, this was a takeover. So this was before all of us, I believe. What? Yeah, I believe it was before you too. Or I'm pretty sure it was.
Really? I'm pretty anxious.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was. Um, but what happened is they had. I thought it was interesting what they were doing. They were intimidating people and eliminating people to make sure that they had enough of the right votes uh, to go on their side. So this hostile takeover, I was like, well, that's interesting. So instead of getting rid of the ones that were voted in, they intimidated the voters, blocked Black people from coming to vote. They um, ran people out of town so that they could all be a part of one particular agenda. So even before my time, before your time, before they recognized the power of the vote.
Yeah.
So I guess that was amazing to me. And reading about it, I'm like, so they didn't take out the officials; they were taking out, pushing people out of the possibility of voting the wrong way. So it's like, okay, and then and paying attention to, because I do follow Barack Obama and on social media and Twitter, especially, and there's a lot of talk about this older African American woman. I don't even remember how many hundreds of miles that she went just to cast her vote. And so I feel like when people say, I'm not going to vote, it's an insult, because people lost their lives
Mhm.
over this. People fought hard for us to have the right to do it. And you have the nerve to say, as easy as it's been made for us to do so, like you can mail in your votes. You can, there's so many different ways to vote, which I mailed in my vote. I was able to track it. We have technology where you can do that. So I know they have it. Um, to say, well, I'm just not going to do it. It's like, do you know the work, blood, tears, everything that went into you even having the right to do so, to give you a voice, to make that change? It's like, how dare you?
Yeah.
How dare you?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Said,
I
it
take
really
that
it really
seriously.
resonates with me because I can remember even when I was not old enough to vote, because our family was so political and civically minded. I know that way back with Aunt Ruth, she would help the aldermen to, get people, out to vote. Aunt Sarah was very political. She worked with Ralph Metcalf and other people, and so they were always politically minded. But I was too young to vote, but it didn't stop me from going out and assisting them. And I can remember when we were still living at 13th and Holman, that there was a gentleman, Mr. Moore, living on the first floor. And I knocked on his door. I said, Mr. Moore, how you doing? I just want to remind you to get out and vote. And he said, how much you going to pay me? And I said, what? Here I am, a young kid, trying to, be civic minded, get this man to come out and vote. He talking about how much are you going to pay me? Because that's what they used to do in those days. They would pay people, you come out and vote Democrat, I'll give you $5 or whatever.
Wow.
I said, sir, I'm not paying you anything. But what I thought about is what Asia said. I thought about the fact that after the slaves were freed and they had acquired the right to vote, do you realize that in order to keep the people from voting, they would have to give them like questions? Okay, they would ask them, how many? Can you name all the presidents? Can you name the all the states? Can you name their capitals? They would have to do a civic test just to be able to vote. And now you got people, and all they got to do is just show up and vote, and they don't want to do it.
Wow.
There are people who, if they got in line to vote, like Asia was saying, that they would beat them or kill them or threaten them or even hang them.
Yeah.
One of the things we have to realize is that our families, the older families, used to have a lot of kids. It wasn't that because they didn't know about birth control. It wasn't because, they were super fertile or whatever the case was, but they knew that there was power in numbers. First of all, it was always good to have, that's a good point you just made, but it was always good to have a lot of people around you just in case the Klansmen showed up at your house. I remember Aunt Sarah and others tell me about when the Klans came to their house, to the Mercer house. And he had a bunch of brothers, Alex and George and all those brothers that they had. And then the kids, his kids, their kids. So it was probably about 100 of them. And so when the guy came up to their house and talking about what they were going to do, first of all, they knew the people because the town wasn't that big. And to be quite honest with you, some of our relatives were part of their family because, we have very light-skinned people. They didn't get to be light because they came from Africa. It was because of intermingling of the races. And so they said, oh, that's so-and-so. He's, actually it was probably a cousin. But the thing was, they were coming to either lynch somebody or do something like that. They called all the family members and they squashed it. But the point I'm getting is what they realized is that the power of numbers. If you can get people to come together, just like we're doing now, come out and vote, you can determine your destiny. And so that's why I'm so proud of the movement to get out the vote. And I'm very excited about the black and brown and yellow women that are starting a movement to say, we are going to do our part to make sure this man does not get back in office because he does not represent minority interests, and he certainly does not represent the best interests of women. And so they formed a coalition to do this. I also got to mention, because Reverend Margaret had mentioned that what Reverend Ford used to do, we had this big van, and when it was time to vote, she would pick the people up and take them to the polling place. Do you realize that she was working as a precinct captain, and she would always pull in at least 97% of her precinct?
Wow.
Yeah, that's saying a whole lot. When the alderman Ed Smith and others say, wow, Reverend Ford, how do you do this? But here's the secret. People don't bite the hand that feeds them. We had a food pantry, So when they came, she would register them to vote, right? So she got them all registered. And then she say, okay, now make sure you're here at 6 o'clock because we're going to the poll because I got to work as, she not only was there, but she's also a judge at the polling place. So she would make sure that everybody showed up. So I'm just telling you, we have some smart people,
Yeah.
some wise people, if you could just pay attention, right?
Right.
Amen.
Yeah. We need some more of that. That's what we
That's
need.
for sure.
We definitely need more of that.
But you know, Asia, when you talk about the tenacity, that's where I get it from. I get it from Reverend Ford. Because
Yes,
when you see somebody 5'2" that can walk into a group of gang members and tell them that you're there to talk to the head leader, and then they tell you you can't come in because this is a vice lord meeting and you're not supposed to be here. And she said, I know what kind of meeting it is. And they say, well, it's a vice lord meeting. She said, good, I'm a vice lord. And they talk, Reverend Ford, what you mean you're a vice lord? She said, well, Jesus is Lord, and I'm under him. That makes me a vice lord. Get out my way.
Oh my God.
So when a small lady like that can be bold enough to walk into a group like that, there is no fear in me.
Yeah.
That perfect love casts out all fear.
Yeah.
That's right. Absolutely right. Yeah, I get my tenacity from her as well. Watched her fight and fight and fight and fight. And the impact that she made in her own community and other communities. I mean, it's just amazing. She worked with the local politicians. Like you said, she wasn't scared. She wasn't shy. She did what she had to do. And yeah, we need a lot more people like that.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Reverend Margaret Jamal. I hope so.
Yeah.
The show is also part of the solution. That's my prayer. I hope so. I hope so. And for those of you that don't have information in regards to the voting, you can go to either one of our sites. You can go to ElijahJamal.com or you can go to AsiaJamal.com. We both have links there that will give you information in your area, wherever you are, where to go and what to do. So yes, please vote. So first of all, I want to recap. We talked about the fact that we need to be more community oriented, knowing your community, having each other's backs. We talked about voting. We talked about education, which I completely agree with and try to push, especially with my own children. Education is power. If you don't know about it, you don't know that you can do something about it. You know, there's so many different things that we can do and what we have the right to do. We don't know until you know. So with all of those things, what I would like to know from you guys is what you would add in regards to if you were speaking to today's generation and they said, well, how can I help? How can I help the cause? Elijah, I want to start with you. What would be your advice?
How can I help the cause?
Yes. The movement.
Vote. I think we just been talking about that the whole time. That's probably the best way that anybody could really help any cause is to first vote. And then after you vote, educate yourself so that you are aware of what is going on. And then it comes down to having a real conversation because that's how change happens. It comes through communication. So vote, educate, communicate.
Absolutely right. What about you, Adrienne?
You know, I agree, Vo. I agree with what Elijah said, right? I think we have to take our stories and make them personal. We have to touch people who aren't like us, who don't live where we live, who don't, shop where we shop. And we need to make sure that our stories are American stories and that they um, join us as allies, because I think that's a necessity to see the type of change we want to see. Um, and I think we also have to, in our own way, look at our life and say, what can I do, no matter how big or how small, to advance the movement? And if you're a teacher, look at how we can, bring equality into education and fight for that within your unions and within, your educational circles. If you're a police officer, focus on police brutality. Whatever you do in your world, make sure you're part of making improving the lives of Black people and eliminating racial injustice.
Absolutely, absolutely. Reverend Perry, what would you have to add?
Well, one of the things I would say, and I think it's important, is that we can all touch someone's life. And I think that we should look for ways of how we can do that. Whether it be a coach, whether it be a mentor, just some way we can touch somebody's life. I can remember even at church one time I had proposed a challenge of getting people out of their comfort zone. And what I did, most of our church members were elderly. And so I went in, I talked to Aunt Maud, talked to Aunt Sarah, talked to Reverend Fort, and I said, here's what we want to do. We want to bring in some young people, and each person needs to have at least one young person that they bring in and mentor. And as a result of that, we saw people that were unruly, that were had bad behavior, and we saw a tremendous change. I think even Norman probably can remember that we would go and take our bus and pick up people over on Fulton, and we would have Christine and Alekia and their families, and we brought them all to church. And I said, each one of us will be responsible for one of these kids. And so as a result of that, kids who probably would have been thrown away because of their parents being on drugs or, just moving from place to place and not really having stability, they were able to change their lives. And now they're living fruitful lives. They're doing well. And so if each one can teach one, if each one of us can take someone and mentor that person, for as long as they allow you to. I know probably for Adrian, she probably mentored Lauren. You take a young person, it could be someone in your family, it could be someone outside of your family, but you can help that person to see better than where they are, if that makes sense. In other words, you can only see as far as you know. But if someone who's been somewhere can take you somewhere where you have not been, then you can grow. And so that's what I think is important now. That young man that I told you about, he's 27 now, had never voted, but he never saw a need to vote. I've been mentoring him for 4 years now. Now he's successful, he has his own business, and he's voting. And so we can all touch somebody, but we have to get out of our comfort zone and be able to take someone where they need to be, because they don't know.
Yeah.
They simply do not know unless they've been taught. Just like people teach people to be prejudiced, you can teach them to be loving. And that's really where it is. I think that
Absolutely.
you need to have that relationship of being a mentor and also being a mentee. Who mentors you? We need mentors.
Mm-hmm.
So we need to have mentors, but we also need to mentor others. So that's where I think the real key is.
Absolutely. I completely agree with you. And when Margaret was saying that after we vote, keep pressing those who get elected to do their jobs.
Well, she's right about that. But here's the thing. I'm going to say this, and I know it may not be popular. For 8 years, we had a Black president. And it's ironic that we're not further ahead than we are right now. I think that we kind of missed the opportunity to really hold the president accountable when he was in office. And I'm just saying, I know because we used to send people to Washington to meet with him, and he would ask the question, "What do you want?" And they gave no specifics. You know, it's kind of like when I tell people, like, you pray. When you pray, you say, "Oh Lord, just make me feel better." You know, "Oh Lord, just make me rich." You know, it's so generic. It's so, you know, there's no real point to what you're saying. You need to have specific things with timelines to get things done, and that's what they did not do. All these religious leaders, all of these political leaders would go and meet with the president, and he would say, "Okay, what do you want? What can I do for you?" And they would never be specific. So, and people aren't going to get,
there
you know,
it is.
the Bible says you have not because you ask not. And when you ask, you be asking for dumb stuff.
Facts. That's a really good point. That's a very good point. We need to, in addition to being educated, we need to be organized
Yeah.
in our approach. So, well, I hope that those that have listened and that will continue to listen, because this is now out there. You will see it on YouTube. You will see it on Facebook. I hope that people will be able to see this and learn some things and be motivated to be a part of a positive change. Emphasize positive, because we can change, but we can change for the worse. We're trying to change for the better.
Yeah.
So she said that's why I teach rates.
Right.
She did a plug. Rates plug. Responsibility, accountability, technical ability, evaluation ability, and sustainability. I remember. All right.
You rate
All right.
certified.
So I know that. Yes, I am rate certified. So I want to thank you all for being a part of the show. I truly appreciate it. I learned some things tonight as well. And so, you know, I will see how I can help my communities even further and make sure that my children are educated. I know at least my oldest and youngest child are very interested in politics and what they mean and what they can do. So I'm doing something right over here. So I hope that I can continue to pull that wisdom and knowledge from you guys while I can. Thank you so much. And till next time, you guys have a good night. And remember to appreciate God's perfect design, which is you. And have a good night.
Well, thank you.
Till
Thank you for having
Friday.
us.
All right. Bye now.
Thank you. Bye.